would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by the talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-line broadcast bunker on the beautiful south coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hey, Oregon. Hello, America and beyond. America and beyond. And wherever you are, I hope you have a good time, and thank you for tuning in to the show. I appreciate it very much. It means a lot to me. And we're going to be having quite an interesting show. We're going to be talking about some things that should scare the crap out of you, because it's the blueprint to controlling your life. They're going to categorize and catalog everything after they take inventory of it, and then they're going to decide who gets what, when, where, and why. And you are now nothing more than a product yourself. This is what we've been watching. This is what's been happening throughout the world for the last several years, probably decades. And we're going to be talking about a whole new level, a whole other tier of the deep state. This is pretty scary stuff that's going to be coming out. I hope you can deal with it. It's not going to be too bad. And I've got a guest who's joining me, and he's a good ranter. You know, this is the Friday night rant. I like to rant, and he is a good ranter himself. He quite often goes to the public meetings. You can catch him at the commissioner's meeting. You can catch him at sometimes at the city hall meetings, and you can catch him at the windmill meetings. He went to the windmill meeting, and it was great to have someone there who was talking on a different level than what was going on by the people who were presenting the meeting. Because I'll tell you what, the people from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They really are some confused people about this windmill project. And I know we asked them quite a few questions, and hopefully sometime in the future, I'll be able to play some of the video that I got from that meeting. But it was a very big disappointment, huge disappointment. And I'm really grateful that my guest was there to speak up, to speak out. And he was talking about things that I'm sure went over most of their heads in that room. But when you start looking into what he was saying, it's very relevant to what's going on today and Agenda 21 and Agenda 30. And joining me right now is James Bennett. James, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. It's been a while since I've talked to you, really, and had a sit down with you. And I thought it was unfair that every time I do see you, you're at a public meeting and you only get 3 minutes to talk. So you really don't have a whole lot of time to explain what you need to explain, to go in depth enough to tell these people what you're talking about. And that must be very frustrating for you, huh?
Well, you do what you can. You know, this being an American thing in a constitutional republic, it wasn't supposed to be a spectator sport. So kudos to you and too few of the other people in our community, Chris Castleman and a couple of others and myself, because, you know, the gifts that are, a grant is a gift. We are granted amazing rights as Americans. And our silence is our consent. When we don't show up and speak out, we take this amazing gift and we give it away, man.
Yeah, I often wonder why people are not at more meetings, and I talk to quite a few people all the time about why you haven't gone to a city council meeting or a county commissioner meetings, and they'll say right up front, "Well, it just doesn't matter, Rob. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what I do." But the fact is that we are granted rights, and every level of government is taking away those rights, including the county, including the cities, and the reason they're able to get away with it is because of those people who don't think it matters. You still think it matters, especially locally, for showing up to these meetings?
Absolutely. And like we're going to talk about tonight, we might screw up and actually make a difference.
We might.
And
It happens.
subject that we're going to talk about, you cannot overstate the significance with words, but mine is to try to convey it well, because you know how when we learn about something that's a little bit outside our belief set, like fiat currency, the first time somebody explained fiat currency to me, even though they didn't use any big words, they kind of had to explain it a couple two times, for it to stick in my computer there. Let me get this straight. This dollar's a debt instrument? What? Well, what I'm going to share is so mind-blowing and so significant and pertinent that mine is to try to do a decent enough job that people get it. But the good part is that we can do something about it. So let me know however you want.
Yeah, well, let's start from the beginning and let's talk about this interesting agency. I'm going to put it up on screen here. I had it on screen, and it's the National Policy Consensus Center. And the strange thing is Jim, you just sent this to me. I never really heard about this until the windmill meeting this past week when you mentioned it. And when you sent me this stuff just a couple hours ago, I was checking it out, and it was mind-blowing that I've never heard of this National Policy Consensus Center, but yet it's being practiced at the Portland State University, and it's being conducted by academia and the students who are, the students of the academia, the academics who were there at the Portland State University, and I was just blown away by this stuff. Tell us a little bit about this National Policy Consensus Center.
Okay, well, let me do a big picture just for a moment, and I'll try to go into it. Okay,
you got it.
So we get where we're at. You can't use common sense or an assumption of goodwill or what you were taught in civics class, right? You just get a headache. You can't get there from here. I think we have to understand a profound evil that's difficult for God-loving people to even get their head around. Kudos to you. You say that a lot of your audience understands UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. That's the second thing. And the third thing is this consensus crap. And if you happen to be talking to people that you sense their eyes glazing over talking about Agenda 21, just replace it with the word overreach, because the two are like interchangeable and synonymous. But this consensus crap is how they're implementing everything, and I'm being quite literal, all of the bad crap, okay? Everything. So what happened is, this is how they're implementing sustainable development, and this is how they're importing communism into America. Death by 1,000 consensus reports. So what they did is, dispute resolution is a lawful procedure. What they did is, they made Portland State University a flippin' government agency, which has a lot of baggage and power and ramifications and coordination that goes with it. Okay, it's heavy stuff.
That blew my mind. I've never heard of this, and I'm going to find out the legislation that created this entity, because you've got a National Policy Consensus Center, which is an actual government agency that's now married to the Portland State University. That's just mind-blowing.
Portland State University is a government agency, and it's a consulting firm out of same. But this is the thing. The quickest way for somebody to get up to speed regarding what we're going to talk about tonight is to get on National Policy Consensus Center and sniff around there for a while. Check out all the warm and fuzzy jargon that means nothing, and look under projects. That's the most important thing. Click on projects. It's a couple of different clicks, and check out the highly impactful shit that they're doing through the NPCC completely outside the people's purview. Like, okay, and I'm gonna go into what they're using this consensus crap for. We can start at the top, or we can start at the bottom.
Let's start at the top.
Let's start at the top. UN
Okay.
Agenda 20 Sustainable Development adopted through consensus at the 92 Rio Earth Summit. They invited people that would go along with a predetermined outcome. That's what consensus is about. It's not a consensus of we the people, or in legal age, the body politic. It's a consensus of those on their vast contact list that will go along with a predetermined outcome. Here's another big one that everyone will relate to, which is sustainable development is largely rooted in. Climate change, the best available science. Well, it's the best available science in their contact list of traders that'll go along with a predetermined outcome. Now, let me try from the bottom. All, in capital letters, underlined, okay? All of the overreaching crap in beautiful Coos County is implemented through this consensus shit. Let me give some examples. The windmill thing, the importing of these criminals and homeless and failure to appear and mental patients. They have a they have a bunch of homeless NGOs in Oregon. And through consensus, I read some of their text. It says, if our facility is full and the individual is receptive, we will find appropriate facilities. Well, translated, Rob, that means that when our DHS facility is full, because we're funding and facilitating and promoting homelessness, we will import these people into your community, even though you don't have an organic local homeless issue, to bring down your morale and your property values and fuck all of your small business in your downtown. And this, we're not unique, man. They're doing this everywhere. Another
Of course,
thing.
it's an easy thing to do. They're sneaking this in under the colleges or into the colleges through academia, and we know that China has put in a couple $100 million not only into just colleges and higher education, but K through 12 schools here in Oregon. That's part of the reason that we have the Oregon China Council here. And that's part of what they're doing is trying to get our businesses to sell to them, their businesses to sell to us, and to exchange cultures. And in the process of exchanging cultures, they're sending their Confucian schools here and teaching this critical race theory and this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage.
Well, it's like we were talking about off screen earlier. Look, I don't want to be a ray of sunshine, guys, but we're at war, okay? Just because there's nobody with ARs on the corner and there's no tanks in the streets, we're in full-blown flippin' warfare right now. The only thing is, it is administrative, institutional, informational warfare. It's unusual. It's fifth generation unusual warfare. And institutionally, they've weaponized everything. Let's start at the bottom. Boy Scout, no matter how benign and innocuous it sounds, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Chamber of Commerce, these iconic 100-year volunteer groups that have been around forever, our churches, our hospitals, our schools, as we all know, institutionally, they've hijacked and weaponized everything through this administrative rule. And I catch myself calling it administrative law, but it's not.
It's not.
Law. No. And like, I've said, I've shared on my own little podcast and shared with our commissioners, look, if you work for a big organization, there's a rule book. If you're playing pickleball, there's a rule book. If you're playing golf, there's a rule book. If you shank one off in the trees, you can't go grab the ball, walk out onto the fairway and chuck it at the pin. Somebody might call you out. Well, you know what? We're Americans. And our rule book, lucky for us, is the most successful, admired, divine societal framework ever conceived. And it has instrument and cure for all that ails us. It's got so many freaking instruments for local control that, frankly, I was really surprised. But what we need to do is, employ our most basic right tied to our First Amendment right, which is to redress our grievance, which should often be synonymous with making sure that our representation, keep them honest, make sure that our representation follows our rule book.
And
that's our job as Americans.
Well, and that is our job because it's a participation sport. It's your government, it's your country, and if you don't get involved, then you only have yourself to blame. The thing about this is that we're trying to fight this on a local level. If you were commissioner or you were advising the commissioners, and I believe you do advise them when you go there and speak to them anyway, what would you be telling them to be doing to fight against this? Because the county is a part of it. The county is a recognized part of these types of organizations.
Well, that's easy. And I have a brainiac legal mind friend of mine, an activist that I reconnected with after meeting him at a party in Ashland 5 years ago. And he is what a servant. He is often on Bill Meyer's radio show out of Medford, and that guy's a real patriot. He's working with Colleen Edwards, who is a rock star commissioner from Jackson County. And my friend, who on my little podcast I call Mr. X, he has a list of accomplishments by simply pointing out the unconstitutionality of this consensus crap. He stopped the prescribed fires. Oh yeah, the fires they're doing through consensus also. And he has a list of a half a dozen wins. As a matter of fact, he kept the Klamath Dam from being blown up for a decade. But his wife is ailing and he had to start to look after her. And, not to sidetrack, but that Klamath Dam should show everybody that this isn't about a genuine concern for the environment.
Right.
They've scrubbed the truth. You search through the subject of the Klamath Dam, and all you see is warm and fuzzy crap from these universities and stuff about saving the salmon. Well, you know what? The salmon are all fucking dead. Everything on the river is dead. The crawfish, which is very, very important to the chain, everything's dead. It's a toxic dump. So, that's what UN Agenda 21 is. It's inventory, privatization, and control of everything. And I'm being literal, everything. under
Everything.
the guise of humanitarian and environmental concern. And by now, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, watchers know that if you believe that, I got some riverfront property on the Klamath to sell you, you know?
This is a huge problem. This is going to continue to be a huge problem because we got those windmills coming in, and it's going to end up in court. And you know how the court cases are going to go. We're going to lose it in Oregon until we get to a federal court that may have some common sense and start listening to us.
But Rob, forgive me. I went off. I guess it is. I'm supposed to rant, but I went off from the important question that you asked me. What would I do if I was a commissioner? Well, what I'm doing with the help of my mentor that I'm learning a lot from is we've scripted a proclamation, and he won't do it for me. He just gets me going down the right rabbit hole. And, you know, we've scripted a proclamation that I have submitted to our commissioners that forbids any consensus-based decision-making in Coos County. And I cannot, with mere words, overstate how significant that is if they adopt it. And I urge all of your listeners to support our two more righteous commissioners in adopting this as an ordinance, because everything is this consensus shit. Let me go off for just a moment.
Please do.
The spotted owl crap, that's a BS consensus report. It's not come on, man. It's not cramping their sex life. The reason that the spotted owl is gone is because there's a larger predatory owl from the east called the barred owl that's moving. I mean, it's all bullshit. What about getting rid of the hatch boxes? Right? Sustainable. Right. We live in a rural area. Tell me if this rings a bell. Anything that's a hub for commerce, tourism, or jobs, they'll find a way to extinguish, often through abusing the Endangered Species Act. But all of it, man, the timberland thing is partly consensus. That should be enough to make them pump the brakes. And what I'm working on and learning about now, another pathway that we can defeat it is the Admissions Act of 1859, which, you know, it's significant. See, when we were accepted into the Union in the 1800s, it was predicated on some significant shit, like us having a Republican form of government, that is to say, a representative republic. But what the Act of 1859 did is it outlined what land the state was allowed to own, and it's a short list, and it don't include that land. And the other pathway might be the fiduciary responsibility that's spelled out in our commissioner's responsibility, speaking to maintaining the economic viability of the community. So between those three pathways, I think that we could get somewhere. And forgive me for saying so. All right, don't forgive me. That county attorney, no, he's not working for we the people. Okay.
Have you ever met a county attorney that was? I mean, I actually have met one, but
I know.
Have you ever met one who's ever worked for us?
But you can turn them. What I hope to do is, and what my mentor, Mr. X, has done, is you don't get adversarial with them, which I've spent way too much time doing over the years.
Right.
You simply support them in doing the right thing. You give them the foundation and the credibility. You see, when we stand on the Constitution, we can never be called a conspiracy theorist, and we're always on solid ground. But they've just turned it around, man. From what I understand, what they do is, and maybe in an honest moment with Rod Taylor, when you have them on, you can ask. But I think what they do is they send them away to school once they get in, and they do what they do to our kids. They indoctrinate the shit out of them. They say, this is how it works. All this collectivism crap. This is how we do it. We do stuff through coordination and consensus. And, this is how we go. And I know it's difficult, and that's what I've shared with them. It's like standing in the middle of the Colorado, man. It's tough. But you know what? Communism's really tough too.
And that's literally what consensus means. It's a form of collectivism in itself. And when you think, consensus, they're going to take consensus from people like you or me, Jim. Bullshit. They ain't going to take nothing from us. We're not part of the consensus group. And of course, the people who are the part of the consensus group, well, they're only going to be part because they believe in DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is very exclusive to people like you and me.
Right. But this is the only, we've been a little ray of sunshine, but this is the only really, really good thing.
Yeah.
Is the census crap that they're using for everything. Did I mention that? Oh yeah, I think I did. It's completely diametrically opposed to our Constitution in both word and spirit, like I like to say. And like I was, was I ranting? They call it righteous indignance, something.
No, actually, they would accuse you of ranting, but I knew what you were saying, but you were using, like I said, this Natural Policy Consensus Center, and you were talking about consensus. I wasn't even familiar with that. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because I started looking it up and I got what you were saying, because it's all part of Agenda 21, Agenda 30. It's all a part of collectivism. It's the part how they're going to completely eliminate private property. These kids are idiots. They start listening to this crap.
Okay. And another little thing is, big thing is, part of this consensus crap, that meeting that we went to, it's what they call a Delphi meeting. Now, are you familiar with that?
Yes, very much so. But please explain it, because, there might be people out there who's not familiar with the term.
The Delphi technique is about bringing a group of people to a predetermined outcome while creating the illusion that their input shaped the final decision, which was a predetermined outcome. It's used in conjunction with the consensus crap. Our military commissioned the Rand Corporation, probably DARPA was involved, but our military commissioned the Rand Corporation around circa 1960 to come up with this. Now, it's often to satisfy a component of the state's constitution that provides for public input. Fancy that. In California, it was CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, which, so what it does is it creates a paper trail, an action trail, photographic trail. They show people in a meeting, even if the people in the meeting are thinking, God, this chick's full of shit. But, it creates and they use once again, they're synthesizing our voice, which is completely unconstitutional. And when you sniff around the National Policy Consensus Center, what is conspicuously missing is any talk about, legitimate, organic, public input. And these people have the nerve to call this public input. These, and I don't know stop me if I didn't explain this part, but in a consensus report, what it is it's an aggregate of stakeholders, public-private partners, these warm and fuzzy sounding NGOs with these great looking logos, and even libtard kids that are on their Oregon Student Association list, which is seven-figure.
They're part of the stakeholders, man.
Yeah, I don't remember that term from civic class.
No, stakeholders, they come into different categories. There are stake makers, the people who make the stakes that the holders are going to be part of. And then there's stake payers. You and I are stake payers. And then there are stake takers. The stake takers are the ones who take from the ones who are paying. So they use the term stakeholders to make it sound like we're all equal in this process, but we're not, because some of us are the artificial animal to be sacrificed, and some of those are the ones doing the sacrificing.
And these meetings, you notice they always have this really condescending, phony vibe to them, like,
Yeah.
we're going to get a little nap and some milk and graham crackers, That's why I kind of acted like that. There's something about speaking the truth and having these people look at you like a Martian, man. It just pushes my button, and they know I'm right. As soon as I signed up, I said, "Oh, a Delphi meeting." She said, but they were cool customers. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll break you off into different groups. You ever been to one of those?
Oh, yeah. And then they'll give you bounded choices. So the only choice you get to make is the choice they give you from each different category that they're grouping you into.
Right. Because they don't want a mob mentality. They don't want somebody like you or I standing up and then everybody else going, yeah, like he said. Yeah, right.
Right.
We were well-behaved. We were well-behaved serfs last night for the most part, except for a couple of us, huh?
Well, I could have been worse, but my favorite senator was there, and so I had to be in somewhat of a better behavior.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, he's already seen you go off on him, deserved. But if we can get rid of any of this consensus-based stuff, and I have a little upstart Rumble channel. It's called What Woke You Up with James Bennett. And I did a podcast a month or 6 weeks ago called How to Know If Your Community is a Captured Operation. And I went over all of the instruments that the globalists use to include our communities in their sphere of influence. So, when you pull into town and you see big out of scale bike lanes and, stacking back housing with retail on the bottom and colored concrete, fake balconies on top with very little parking next to a transportation corridor, and you say that doesn't apply to Coos? Check out their transportation plan. Transportation, there's another one that sounds benign.
Right.
But, restriction of travel is part of sustainable development. But when you search Coos Bay transportation plan, they have planned all of the typical captured sustainable development shit. Bike lanes, affordable housing. See, what they're going to do is, to fuck us more, is I guarantee you what they want to do is make it so the traffic driving through Coos Bay on 101 is really bad. So it takes tourists in their RVs an hour to get through town.
Yeah, remember when they were trying to take Bandon down from 2 lanes to 1 lane? Yeah. And they said the reason is because they had to put a crosswalk up with lights. And I said, wait a minute, they have those crosswalks in Portland where there are 2 lanes. So why can't you do it here? And of course, they didn't have an answer for it. And luckily, Fire Chief Laney said, look, we have to have 2 lanes on each side so we can get the fire trucks through. And luckily, the city council came to its senses. But look what they did to Reedsport. Reedsport is now down to 1 lane.
See?
And it's congestion, man.
They call them road diets. I call them business diets.
Yeah.
The automobile is the enemy of sustainable development, as you know.
Yes.
But it's a completely captured operation. Then they've got, what are they called? Urban renewal districts?
Yes.
Are you hip to those?
I'm very hip to those, man.
It employs what they call tax increment financing.
Yep.
Okay, so check this out, guys. Whatever the chronological set point is when this gets adopted with these unelected schmoes, right? All of the additional tax revenue from that point on gets funneled to these unelected schmoes so that they can install the hardscape of sustainable development. Well, if you think about it, it's absolutely impossible to grow a free market organic economy with that in place.
And that's what we've been arguing for a long time. And I used to post all those urban renewal projects on there. You know, the ones where they'd give $100,000 to the Dolphin Theater, or they gave one to a gym that was owned by a rapist, an actual convicted rapist. And there's the mayor of Coos Bay with the rapist getting his picture taken. And like you said, nobody even knows how this is financed. And it's not a tax, it's a debt that's paid for with taxes, because they use 10 other overlapping taxing districts to pull money from. And that's why those districts are always coming to us saying, hey, we ain't got enough. Well, maybe if you didn't give so much to urban renewal, you would have some.
It's a kleptocracy, man. They're just robbing us blind. And you know, this resonates with me. Like I've shared with Coos Bay Council and I've shared with our commissioners, Coos Bay should be doing awesome by fucking mistake without even doing anything right. It's up on a knoll, surrounded by water, with a natural port. It should be freaking lattes and Land Rovers and art studios and high restaurants. And the biggest problem in Coos Bay should be being able to afford the real estate.
Right.
But there would be jobs flowing and abundance. But instead, they've hitched their wagon to Salem. And then inadvertently, by doing so, they've hitched their wagon to the globalists that are behind everything that's wrong on planet Earth. And whenever you let them drive your bus, it always, every fucking time ends up in a bad place, man. We need to regain the sovereignty of our community and get rid of League of Oregon Cities, Association of Oregon Counties. Those two. Also, we should change our charter, Rob. And this is subordinate to our Constitution, but it's making it harder. So what I'm learning is, can we spend 1 minute on charters?
Yeah. In fact, I was going to ask you about home rule, because you were talking about home rule at one of the county meetings, and I wanted to hear more on your opinion. But once again, they limit the time you talk. So please, you've got all the time in the world to talk about this.
We don't have much time on this one. It's easy. It's deceptive, like everything else. Okay, there's 3 terms that you'll usually see on a charter: home rule, agency of the state, which is more telling. It's like you're a franchisee of USA Inc., right?
Right.
And body politic. And the term body politic in legalese means we the people. Now, what they'll do in another attempt to deceive with their wordsmithing, what I've learned is that on charters and a lot of legal documents, the sequence in which they appear is everything. So agency of the state and what's the other one?
Home rule.
Home rule. They need to be in listed second and third. A body politic needs to be first, because the second and third are subordinate to the first legally on a document like a charter. And it's not an easy ask, as you know. We have to get a bunch of signatures and everything, but we should work on that too. But even still, even though it's an agency of the state, and even though they own the clerk and the treasurer or whatever, it doesn't matter. All of it is subordinate to the federal and ORS's state constitution. And there's a constitutional passage that basically says that, anything that is inconsistent with constitutional provisions is null and void. But it's like I say, it's a fait accompli style of governance. They do shit all the time that they know is 3 and 4 different levels of unconstitutional.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. Why can't we, though, craft a charter starting off by protecting our basic rights? And I mean, I don't mean those phony rights like your right to housing, your right to health care, your right to ice cream on Sundays. You know what I mean?
We can.
Yeah.
But consensus shit is even more important than that. If we can support Rod and Bob into creating an ordinance pursuant to the proclamation that I submitted to them, and I don't know if you could post it to your site. And I also posted a couple of notices that I've given to Coos Bay and stuff. And my friend, Mr. X, see, when you put them on notice, and it's not like you're not like trying to go legal with them or anything, you're simply doing your job. You're not being adversarial. You're just reminding them, putting them on notice. But even if it does escalate in these other communities, my mentor, by employing this, and I found myself using it as a technique, I want to call it something like a technique. No, all it's doing is doing what we were supposed to do all along, reconcile what's going on with our Constitution and pointing it out. But all I'm blabbing about is this. They don't say uncle or you win or anything. They run it up their legal food chain to the county attorney. They run it up to Salem. And they're told that it's bulletproof, man. And they just kind of, much more often than not, they just go away.
Right.
Because they don't want to bring more attention to it and set a precedent. Now they'll morph, and they're relentless, as we know. They'll take another run at it. But they know they're not on solid ground. As a matter of fact, I couldn't find it, but I have it written down here. On the National Policy Consensus Center, they have a disclaimer, basically in an effort to hold themselves harmless. So let me get this straight. Let me just do a little dose of big picture. They want our officials to carry out, let's not mince words, basically acts of war against their own people and expose them, but they want to hold themselves harmless. The whole thing is just, it's so far out of line, Rob. I'm going to read you the disclaimer, and of course it's in fancy language like all their crap, right? I'm going to read you the disclaimer, okay? That's on the National Policy Consensus Center. Cautionary note: participation is the key to legitimacy. Government-sponsored consensus processes are not the traditional forms in which policies are made, administered, or educated in a democracy. In traditional forums, the mechanisms for determining who participates directly in the writing and administration of law are spelled out in constitutions, charters, statutes, and rules. They know they're not on solid ground.
And yet they're still moving forward with all this garbage because it doesn't matter. and we've seen what happens when you take it to the court. Ask Trump about courts, and you see what they did to us when we had a local case where the judge was told by the county that if we even ran the election today, the same way we ran the election on election night, we wouldn't get the same results. And the judge even repeated that. And under that information, he declared that the defendants, the people who were trying to get the ballot images, they lost the case, but they got what they wanted because the judge knew that the people who were presenting the case were presenting a screwed up case because they literally told the judge that it's like having a math problem that no matter how you do the math problem would never come out the same again. So 5 plus 5 is going to be 10 this time, but 5 plus 5 is going to be 12 next time. And we just can't do that. And the judge knows this. So he ruled in favor of the county. And I think probably because he knew that we couldn't afford to do appeal, and that even if we did an appeal, that the upper level courts were just as corrupt as any of them. And he just ended it right there because he knew it was going to cost a whole bunch of money. And he did it under a bunch of legal jargon. And this was a good judge, Judge Stone. But yet he wasn't that good of a judge that day because I think that he decided for practicality, political expedience. That's what I believe he was deciding on. Because if I got that information as a judge, what would you do? What would you do? The county clerk is telling you we can't run the election and get the same results.
Well, another component with the elections too is how they've weaponized the universities. They use this Oregon Student Association, and they can chime in.
Yeah.
They can vote. They can be from Maine, and they get 2 ballots, one in their state, and they send them one from here. And if they say that they are considering that they might move to Oregon one day, they let these left-leaning kids vote. It's just completely. And then, of course, our post office, which is another, I think we've learned in recent years that the post office is another captured operation. Let them take everything to, Portland. What could go wrong? Talk about loss of custody, huh?
And anyone who doesn't think that this isn't happening, one of the things that I have proved beyond through the preponderance of evidence, from the evidence that I got from the county clerk's office in Curry County and the clerk's office in San Francisco County, 2 different states, 2 different clerk's office who validated that Thomas Tuttle, and I got to say allegedly because he wasn't tried and convicted, but allegedly he was committing voter fraud since 2012 in California and here in Oregon because he was voting in both elections at both of his addresses, one in Curry, one in San Francisco. And I reported this to the Secretary of State, and they told me that because of the date of the elections that he had voted on, it was beyond the statute of limitations. He has since filed to get rid of his voter registration in California because he knew I was on to him because I had contacted the clerk to see if he was still an eligible voter. And she made sure that he got rid of his registration in California and that he's only registered here in Oregon. But how many people, because there are 400 houses in Bandon that are second houses to other people from other places, some of them from other states. Who's checking? And I know nobody's checking because that's what the clerk told me. Who's checking to see that they're not voting in both states? Who's checking to see if these college kids are not voting in both states? And I just gave you an example of it happening here in Curry County.
No, they're, as you know, I was Rod Taylor's campaign manager.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good at writing stuff. I hope I helped him with speeches and door hangers. I don't particularly have a high election IQ, which I think I showed. I kind of freaked out when they stole the primary. But anyway, but I would compare notes with other activists, other patriot groups that I know of, and they were doing the same 6 or 8 tricks that they were doing here. It's because I think that these, probably Soros-funded NGOs are coaching them, and they have a template on how to do it, man. They're stealing elections in little podunk towns, in big cities, and entire countries, and they've been doing it for a long time.
You actually found, and I can't remember where, I've got the screenshot. I'm going to share it now of this. It's another acronym, OSCRTN. And if you look at who some of the following members of the Oregon South Coast Regional, that's what it stands for, the Oregon South Coast Regional Tourism Network, who believe collaboration can strengthen our region. And right there, it shows the state parks, the Wild River Coast Alliance, SCDC, which, they've been responsible for a lot of boondoggles here in Coos County. And of course, if you go down a little bit further, you can see the mill, you can see the city of Coos Bay, you can see the city of Bandon, and of course, right there at the bottom on the right, you can see Coos County. There we are. We're right in the middle of this, man.
Well, you used a couple of words there: collaboration, regional. Look, if you fire up your search engine and go to our federal constitution and you put a word in there and it comes back no results found, that means it has no place in our constitutional republic. Put regional in there. Put what's the other one? Collaboration in there. What they are is, in legalese, they're what they call adjuncts. In other words, they're unnecessary additions. And that's what the consensus crap is. It's an adjunct. And there's passages that say if other laws exist, and in these notices, notices that I've generated a couple of, and my friend Mr. X has, it includes usually a half a dozen different, look at all the warm and fuzzy, look at all the great looking logos.
Yeah.
Nothing says credibility like a good looking logo. But these passages, in these notices, there's a half a dozen different constitutional passages that would strictly forbid this consensus crap, any one of which should make them pump the brakes. But it's just, man, it's just an absolute tsunami of this crap. And they've made it normal. They've brought a normalcy to it. But, just because they've been doing it doesn't mean it's right. They've been stealing elections all over the world for a long time. It doesn't mean it's right. They stole 1 million of our children last year. It doesn't mean it's right. And I hope that your audience, with what's been going on, I hope that you understand. I hope everybody is starting to see that, that was then and this is now. And we're going to win. This particular unique time in our history, we're going to win. But we have to exercise the divine gift that is our free will, which is very much intrinsically tied into our Constitution.
Yeah.
And they ain't stealing this election. And I'm placing bets. If anybody wants any, we can square up over the holidays.
They're doing the old, they're bringing back the logo, go big and beat the rig, because we know they can only cheat to a certain percentage. So if we overwhelm them with more votes that overwhelm the percentages that they cheat, then that's when we should have the ability to win. And people, they often bring that up about Rod Taylor. Well, Rod Taylor won, but he only won, I believe, by a couple of hundred votes.
I'd love to ask you this question. You got your finger on better than I. Do you really think that Rod Taylor only won by 170 votes, Rod?
No, I think there's a problem with that. And I think part of it is because he got such a good, overwhelming amount of votes. That's why he won. And there was a rig in on that election to take 2 or 3%. But we got over that 2 or 3% that they were going to be able to rig it. And that's what happened. And number two, I do have to remind people he wasn't in the voters' pamphlet. And that's what a lot of people blame that low victory by, is the fact that he wasn't in the voter pamphlet, because I do think he would have got 1,000 to 2,000 more votes because of that. But like I
Wow.
said, who knows? Who knows?
Kind of stinky. And then there was the documentary, Curious
Yeah.
Enthusiasm. And I don't know, I got a little upset. I was outside the clerk's window with my bullhorn, telling her that she was going to be going to sleep in orange pajamas and stuff. Maybe not that professional for not that professional of a thing to do, but I got kind of pissed off. But
Well,
at the last,
we just, after 2020, I don't know how anyone can justify not getting pissed off after what we saw in the presidential election.
not very campaign managerial, but and then as a parting shot, they just tried to get a little division mileage out of it and said that he only won by 170 votes.
Yeah.
There's one other thing. If we could backtrack and go back to sustainable development and the consensus
Yes.
thing, by the way,
Yes.
are at the hips. The consensus, everything's sustainable development. And the consensus process is how they're implementing it. But there's one important thing, and I don't know if Deweese has ever talked about it or you're familiar with this. Okay. Sustainable development employs what's called the precautionary principle. It's a guilty till proven innocent kind of postulate. Okay. So even though people that live in the country, that are the original environmentalists, by the way, and people with biologists with capital letters after their name and sharp, well-spoken people give excellent arguments to one of these intrusions, one of these consensus-driven projects that they're trying to do. It often, and I'm not, trying to keep people from speaking out, but it often doesn't matter. And this is the reason. In the precautionary principle, deference goes to whatever critter or indigenous people or whoever they're trying to pretend like they give a shit about. And you find yourself trying to prove a negative.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why attacking it at its point of inception, like I'm seeking to do with this consensus crap, first of all, it's much more effective. Second of all, our efforts are much more economical. And you've got them dead to rights. Because like I'm saying, it's completely diametrically opposed to our rule book. And to call it public input is a crime. And like I was saying at the meeting the other night, I did my own little informal study. And as though it wasn't enough of a crime to call these consensus studies a public input, 80% of these different entities that make up the consensus report aren't even from the area.
Right.
Let me give an example as to how prevalent it is, Rob, if I may. I can go to other places, like when I did my little speaking thing last month, I can go to other places and talk to the local patriots there, and I'll say, so what's the biggest shitty project? What's the biggest overreach intrusion that they're trying to impose on the community right now? And a typical one will be, they want to put a big old freaking out of scale DHS homeless facility right in the middle of the most important anchor spot of the whole downtown, right? Kind of a different brand of Winda Coos. And so whatever the project is, I say, oh, what do they call the project? What's the name of the oh, really? Then in my search engine, I add the word collaboration, consensus, and report. And son of a bitch, it's like a miracle. In a minute and a half, much more often than not, bingo. It pops up. It's in a PDF. It's usually 60, 80, or 200, 300 pages. You open it up, and in the acknowledgments on the first page, it pays homage to all the different entities that made up this consensus report and the predetermined outcome. And like I was sharing with you before, I don't know if I've shared this, but already. But the Maui fires. Listen to this, guys. You won't even frickin' believe your ears. The Maui fires, the Canadian fires that were raging recently, and the fires in Australia, which is very much steeped in sustainable development, as we know, they all commissioned the National Policy Consensus Center to lend legitimacy through administrative rule these acts of war. They use the National Policy Consensus Center. And when you look at one of their reports with all their warm and fuzzy, deceiving language, you'll see stuff like returning the forest to its pre-white settlement conditions.
Right.
And they don't call it fire prevention. They call it fire management. And they don't call it deliberately lighting. They call them prescribed fire.
Burns, right. Instead of just going in there with a chainsaw and just taking some of those damn trees out. No, we got to do it the crazy way. Yeah.
And my friend kept them from lighting these deliberate fires in his neck of the woods in Jackson County by attacking the consensus process, and also with language that another pathway that we should be using to great effect is that part of their fiduciary responsibility is to protect the economic welfare of the community. That's another pathway.
And that's why they were talking about Goal 19 at the windmill meeting. But yeah, I can guarantee you for their enforceable policies that really aren't enforceable against the federal government coming from the state in that windmill meeting, Goal 19, which I don't agree with most of it. Once again, it's one of those consensus created goals by the state. But if you looked at what they were actually saying they were trying to achieve and what they were really achieving, it's two different things. But that's what I was saying. Use the Goal 19 where they talk about culture, the environment, the economy, the wildlife, all of the things that should be actually protected when we're really burning the forest. And these people don't give a damn about the bunnies and the duckies who are burning out there. You know what I mean? And that's the problem.
Carbon release of the fires.
Yeah.
Anybody that thinks that these people at the top have a legitimate concern for the environment are,
yeah.
What that windmill thing, man, as you know, from the very, very beginning to the middle to the very, very end, it's a completely ineffectual, damaging cluster.
Yep.
Every single aspect of it. But it's like I always say, you can't use common sense or an assumption. Did your dad ever say that? Assuming
yes.
It's you and me.
Yeah.
You can't use common sense or an assumption of goodwill or anything you were taught in civic class. You can't get there from here, man. Have you noticed? You just get a headache. It just makes your head bad.
Because it's not based on common sense. It's based on controlling and manipulating the populace. So I put up on the screen because I found this link because I was looking at the Policy Consensus Center. They have a Copenhagen. This is Copenhagen, Denmark, a consensus center there that works very similar to the college consensus center, but they do it on a global level. Imagine that.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, some of the capability that is enabled by making them a government agency is that they can coordinate with other countries. That's why they were able to commission them to in an attempt to legitimize these wildfires. I mean, it's not the first time that fire has been used in war, and
Right.
it's time that we recognize that we're at war.
We're at war. Fire is being used as a weapon. Here in Bandon, they were using the mosquito as the weapon because, they were only going to buy property up in the Coquille Valley from willing sellers. Well, what makes a person who's owned a farm and had that farm in their family for over 100 years all of a sudden become a willing seller unless they had some biological disaster like a mosquito infestation that was driving them out because they could no longer stand to live in the area? Well, the same thing is happening with the fires, and it's being used against the people of rural Oregon, rural America, to get us out of the rural places, to get us out of the country, and marches into these 15-minute smart cities that they're creating, they're designing for us. And just exactly like you said, probably about 20 minutes ago, the biggest enemy to all of this is your vehicle, your car, and transportation. And look how they're trying to tell kids these days, you don't need cars, man. All you need is a smartphone and you can go anywhere. And what is a smartphone? That's just nothing but an inebriant for the mind.
Well, what we're seeing, in keeping with it being acts of war, what I've seen in other communities is they deliberately create mosquito habitat so they have an excuse to spray us and poison us like bugs.
Yep.
And the next one they're working on, try to my psychic abilities. What they're trying to do now is implement this toilet to tap program. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
Where they filter our water. Have you noticed that they're asking for money to rehab our water utilities a lot lately, and they're calling it the TAP program?
Yep.
Have us drinking, trusting them for how they filtered our recycled sewage water. Lack and scarcity, See, part of sustainable development, even benefiting from working with a couple of the sharpest people in the country on sustainable development, Rosa Corey and Michael Shaw, it just finally occurred to me a year or so ago that fucking Agenda 21's a business plan.
Literally it is, but it's a business plan for the Fabian socialist, the globalist, who want to control every fucking thing on this planet.
Inventory, privatization, and control. Okay, so if everything's privatized, you want to manipulate the supply and demand dynamic, right?
Right.
Another Standard Oil, Rockefeller's people came up with the term fossil fuels because it has this implication of finite. We're going to run out of time, when it's really a naturally occurring geological byproduct that we have freaking oceans of, right? But play with the supply and demand dynamic, and water. The biggest players on the planet are stakeholders in our water. The World Bank. That's what they're doing with the Klamath. They're going to send the water to California. And fuck all those people. What's their land worth without water? Another instrument of rural cleansing, right?
Right. Get rid of the water, you definitely get rid of the people. The guy who owns the well in the Old West was the most important person in the place. So, yeah, absolutely.
And another one that belongs in the life-changing information that's been hoarded from us file, which is, I think we're going to find is a very big file, is that we have primary water. It's not just air, surface, ground. Much of the earth, even in the most arid areas, has oceans of clean potable water deep underground that moves inches a year.
Yeah.
Gaddafi knew about it. He didn't want their central banker take their funny money, so they, killed him. But he was creating what many call the eighth wonder of the world. He had accessed primary water, and he had made all of these aqueducts, and he was going to turn that arid region, he was turning it into an agricultural utopia.
And you say that, and I just read a story earlier today, and I can't remember which desert it was, but they were claiming that under this desert, that there is an aquifer of water the size of the Atlantic Ocean. It's huge under a desert. Plenty of water if you can dig and get to it. And we now have the technology to do that. And you could turn that desert into, like you said, a agricultural oasis. But do you think they're going to want to do that? Oh, no, my friend. We don't want the land of plenty.
How many billions of people live in arid places, and how
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, man. It just goes, people think they understand the three things. I hate to use the word understand. We don't stand under these people. But again, the three things we need to see, unfortunately, is a level of evil that is just on a completely different station. And if you ever have any doubts, I mean, look at documents that were never meant for our eyes. Like, write this down. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, Report from Iron Mountain, Controlling the Weather by 2025. These are documents that were never meant for our eyes. You can search them online. And in short order, when you read documents like this that were never meant for our consumption, man, you get a flavor for how seriously they take our decline. They're not fucking. I mean, it's just like you can tell by the tone of the writing that they're very serious.
When you see Klaus Schwab, and I forget the guy who's right under him, when you see people like Klaus Schwab and those alien freaks who are right underneath Klaus Schwab talking about things like you'll own nothing and be happy, that once again goes to that no one's going to own private property because they're going to control the supply and demand. So you don't need private property. They're going to be able to control and plan a central planning organization that can decide for every single human individual out there what they need and what they don't need based on their plan. And anyone who's ever studied communism knows that most of the time these leaders, those plans, they don't work out too well for too many people. 100 million people died in China. Another 100 million died in Russia and Yugoslavia because, not Yugoslavia, the Ukraine. In the Ukraine, because of these types of central planning ideas that gone completely array. And what we need are individuals acting autonomously to find the best way to do everything, because not everything is done the same way everywhere, and not one organization or one person or one planner can plan for me or you, Jim. You and me are so different. Nobody could plan for you or me because we live such autonomous, different lifestyles. And that's just the way every human is. You know what I mean? And it's crazy they want to do this.
And these people from Portland, a lot of them that are involved in this, they call themselves progressives.
Yeah.
Well, progressive is a communist, but progressive sounds better. Communism has a bad association with people, all the broken dreams, all the poverty, all the genocide. But progressive, the most powerful people you'll ever hear speak, Rob, are people that lived through a communist takeover. Like my father's side is from Venezuela or from Cuba. They just want to take us by our ears and shake us and tell us that We've seen the features of this road, and it ends in a really, really bad place, man. And this consensus crap is the way they're importing communism into our, and it's part of the American, the human condition, I think, is, we think that our time in history is like unique or something.
Right. Like we're impenetrable to falling for these bright ideas that are really just
But Commie 101, I mean, other than the technocratic part of it, which is a conversation all in itself, most all of this is nothing new. This is Commie 101.
Yep.
Oh, because they don't want to remodel. They want to build a whole new structure. So there's demo to do. And that's what we're witnessing.
And the scary part, though, Jim,
moral, fiscal demo. I'm sorry.
Well, the scary part is, I was going to say, is that the technology that we have to scan, track, and trace every single fucking thing on this planet is what's going to be used against us. And people, like I said, they love those cell phones. Well, eventually it's going to be mandated that you're going to have some type of cell phone device implanted in your body because the government wants to keep you safe at all times under the guise of safety. And it's really going to be nothing about, once again, the supply and demand and the plan they have for every individual.
Well, not to go into the spiritual woods in the weeds in your show, but divine universal law is free will, and it has a lot of layers to it. For us now, you can call it the will to be free, and it's tied in with our divine constitution as well. But I ask you, what are they completely fucking preoccupied with taking away from us? Free will. When you look at the patent of the bioweapon jab, in the language of the patent, it calls it an operating system. Well, what do they want to operate? What do you hear that little dweeb crony of Klaus Schwab, the bald-headed young, talk about?
I can't remember his name, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're exactly you're talking about.
They're completely preoccupied with taking away our free will.
And the reason we have free will is because we have choices. We have choices and we have opportunity right now, and we're losing those opportunity and we're losing those choices. And there are people out there, kids, who love having choice A and choice B. That's all they want is choice A or choice B. But I'm always one of those guys who go in, well, what about choice C, D, and E? In fact, why don't we have an unlimited amount of choices? Why don't we have choices that I get to decide and other people can decide for me, or not for me, but to give to me, that I don't even know exist? Choices should be unlimited. And that's what they're taking away from us. They're not giving us any choices. You're going to live in this city. We're going to cut off the rural area. We're going to live in this city. We're going to control what supply and demand is. So we're going to tell you what resources you need, what you don't need, how you're going to survive, because you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy because you don't have to make any choices now. No choices, no responsibility. We can just procreate until kingdom comes, right, Jim?
Well, tying into what you're saying and the free will thing, look, by being blessed, and we are blessed, by being blessed to be Americans, we are granted certain unalienable rights. A grant is a gift. And our silence comes back to the free will shit again, right? Yeah. Our silence is our consent. When we are silent and we don't engage, what we're doing is we're taking this divine, amazing gift and we're giving it away. Our silence is our consent. And when people don't show up, not so much ours, because we have 2 out of 3 that are pretty good, but they I know it because I've heard him say it out loud. I mean, I've been in this fight for getting close to 20 years now. They interpret that as your compliance. And I, like you alluded, being an American wasn't supposed to be a spectator sport. We got a republic if we can keep it. And this is the part where the Constitution not only provides for our engagement, it requires it at
Demands it.
And I would love to see, commissioner meetings. I know that work, kind of cuts up your whole day, but those that can make it show up. And, what if it turned into a little bit of a social thing where we all showed up, we went out to Denny's or went to eat afterwards and compared notes, reconciled what was said with what we're going to do about it. And that's the way it should be. And even though not as many show up as should, sometimes what happens when you show up is you meet amazing, authentic people that really care. And
so what did you think of that Chris Castleman who was running? What did you think of him? What was your opinion of him? Because I thought he was unique.
Well, until he saw a Bob Main sign on my fence when he drove by, right when I was putting it up, I thought we're friends. But him running, I think he's great. I think him running for commissioner would be kind of like me running for commissioner, in that we'd get so stonewalled and so blackballed that we would be ineffectual. And this is the thing. And I think two things. I think that Chris can be more effectual as an activist, as a commissioner, than a commissioner. I told him so. And the other thing is, like it or not, Bob Main is the most important man in the county. He has a depth of knowledge in terms of knowing the history and where all the bones are hidden, and having a depth of procedurally what's happened administratively and everything that it doesn't come close with anybody else.
I've known Bob for probably a little over 20 years, and I can tell you, and nothing against Bob, but he's getting older. We all are. And boy, he is slowing down.
I know. But, we need him right now. And if anything comes of this, and thank you so much for having me on. And kudos to you, man. You've been at it for a long time. And the people that we should be admiring in this significant chapter are those that feel compelled to get involved, And you're
Absolutely.
one of them, and Chris is one of them. But I think that if anything comes of this, I hope that we've conveyed how significant this consensus crap is. And the good news is it's not a convoluted subject. It's very straightforward in that how unconstitutional it is. And I hope that we can get more people showing up at these commissioner meetings, and we'll go out and talk about shit that really matters, man, not sports.
Right.
And,
Right.
This is the significant chapter in our ongoing right now. And there's nothing else more important going on. Forgive me. I know that everybody's strapped and everything, with the inflation and stuff. I know, and I feel it. But if you can, show up, get engaged. This Coos Health and Wellness, I mean, every single meeting is given more money to these people. And that is part of the model. That's what they do. They fund these innocuous sounding, benign sounding groups. And in the meantime, the county is holding its pockets inside out, asking for more money. What about, through the consensus shit, what about all the money that we're spending on these indigent that were imported into our area. What kind of getting rid of that encumbrance? What kind of different spin do you think that would put on our bottom line in Coos County?
I'm to the point where, and you hear this, if you're out listening, I go once in a while on patrol on neighborhood watch and stuff, and you'll hear 2, 3, sometimes 4 ODs in a night. And my question is why are we still allowing our emergency services to even go out to bring these ODs back? Because they bring back most of these overdosed people with the Narcan. And I'm like, why? We have so much we could spend these resources on. And if they're trying to kill themselves, it may sound cruel to some, but to me, I think we should let them have their free will. And I don't know where, you know what I mean? What do you think of that? Am I being too cruel?
Well,
I don't think so.
It's like I was saying a while ago, you can't use common sense and assumption of goodwill. You can't get there from here. The term I use, and I have for a few years that resonates with me, is societal sabotage.
Yeah.
These are all instruments of societal sabotage. It's deliberate.
It's deliberate.
Because under communism, they don't want to remodel, they want to build a whole new structure. So there's demo to do. And that's what we're seeing, the civil, moral, fiscal, family, health demo of the country. And it's all deliberate. And when we call them idiots, I think that we're letting them off too easy. Look, when you're at war, those that go along to get along, forgive me, I'm a nice guy. I don't want to sound too, but they're fucking collaborators, man.
They are collaborators.
In a time of those that go along are collaborators.
And we saw,
now,
Jim, people were asking at one time how, when they learned about, now her name's now escaping me, the young girl in Germany that was hiding from the Jewish girls, Anne Frank, we found out through the COVID mask mandates and the social distancing mandates and the closing down of the economy, we found out which people in society would have turned in the family that was hiding Anne Frank, because those were the ones who were saying, no, we got to go along with the state, no matter how draconian the rules are. They're telling you to wear a mask, you put a mask on. They're telling you to wear 2 masks, put 2 masks on. They're telling you to get a vaccine, you damn well better march out there and get a vaccine. And if you don't, you're putting the rest of us at risk. And we have found out since this has happened that you and I and everyone who are going to those protests, who are standing up against this nonsense, we were right. We were right, and they were freaking wrong, man.
Well, the conspiracy theorist has gained a lot of credit in the last 20, 30 months, huh?
Yeah.
Still on it. Notice the more I speak the truth, the less Christmas cards I get, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
It's amazing.
And so I appreciate you coming on. We've been going on here for about an hour 30, and I'll have you back on again. But I had to ask you, my guest Monday is Tom DeWeese, and Tom DeWeese is from the American Policy Center. Are you familiar with his work?
Oh, yeah.
Good deal. He will be on the show, and we'll be talking about China and the great threat to rural America and how China is bringing in those solar farms to destroy our agriculture land and to get control over our authority over our energy. And of course, those windmills off the coast is all about the China plan. And Tom DeWeese is going to be coming on Monday to talk about that. So I hope that you could tune in, because just talking about what we were talking tonight, just ties in. That's why I really wanted you on the show. When I found out I was going to have Tom DeWeese on, and I said, wow, I got to get Jim on, especially after listening to what you were saying at the windmill meeting. I knew this show here would tie in perfectly with Tom DeWeese on Monday.
Right on. I think Soros took over the CCP. One of their favorite adages is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, you know?
Yeah.
Important that we not confuse, you know, Nazis with German people, or
Right.
Kazakhstans with Jewish people, or communist China with Chinese people, or Israelis with, you know, because the people even before that invasion last year, I mean, they were filling the streets. The people of Israel were filling the streets, and people all over the world are waking up. And I believe that this particular time we win, guys, but we got to do our thing. Free
We
will.
got to do our thing. Free will. Hey, thank you for coming on. And once again, give the name of your podcast. I've got the email address at the bottom of the screen, but go ahead and give the name to it.
It's it's on Rumble. What woke you up with James Bennett? That's my little Rumble channel. Is that what you were talking about?
That's the one. I've already went over there and followed it.
Okay.
All right, man.
And get some tech help to help me continue. I haven't done one in a month or so. So anyway, I'll work on it. Thanks so much.
All right. You take care, man.
Man. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. All right. And that was my guest tonight. And I hope you enjoyed him because, you know, I think he gets a lot of people at these meetings. They don't quite understand what he's talking about because he only gets 3 minutes. It's really sad. You only get 3 minutes and you don't really get to say a whole lot. So to talk about what he's about, kind of have to hear a lot more of the story. So I was very happy to have him on. It was an interesting, absolutely interesting conversation that I hope didn't scare too many of you. I know you look at what we were saying and you're saying, what do you mean, Rob? They're coming out for total control. What do you mean, Rob? We're at war. Well, we are at war. We're at war against people who are absolutely inhuman people. In fact, many of them don't want to be human. They're into transhumanism, where they want to be hooked up to the mainframe and have a chip put into their brain because they don't want to have responsibility or control. They want to be anesthetized with whatever internet virtual reality that they can get their hands on, and it's really sick. Lenny Ketchum here has a great comment. He says communists are subhuman. I'd like to think they're subhuman. They behave like subhumans, but the problem is that they're all too human. They prove that there are humans out there who are just willing to do any horrible atrocity, commit any horrible atrocity against their fellow human. It's the inhumanity of man against man, and it's just disgusting. What's going on here. Let's see. Lenny makes another comment. He was just speaking the obvious. And to you and me, Lenny, it is obvious. But the problem is that there are a lot of people out there who haven't figured this shit out yet, man. They listen to us and they say, oh, these are just a bunch of old white guys who are conspiracy theorists. And okay, maybe we are, but we've been right before. So I think people need to start listening. So I'm glad you're there, Lenny. I'm glad there are so many Michaelas on the line and other people I know who are watching. They get it. But the problem is we're the minority. We're still looked at as the tinfoil hat fringe group who's sitting in our basement. Here I am in my tinfoil lined basement here. And they just think that we're nuts, when the fact is that we're one of the few people who are actually in tune to what's happening to us. And it is happening to us. It's happening to us so quick, so overwhelming that I'm not sure if we can stop it, because it may be a machine that's unstoppable. We may have created Frankenstein's monster through our sustainability and all the other bullshit that comes out of all of these different agencies, these different groups, these different organizations who are hell-bent on, well, basically controlling the world. They want to rule the world. They want to rule your world. And I'm just not going to give it up that easy, and I'm going to continue doing what I do. And that's why I'm excited to have Tom Weiss on the show this Monday. If you get a chance, do tune in, because we're going to be talking about what's happening with China, what's happening in Russia, what's happening here in rural America. He's going to be talking about how so many of our politicians have been compromised, David Brocksmith, and those people are going to do whatever they can to obey and do the bidding of their masters, not do the bidding of the people. And so it's going to be very interesting how this plays out, because there's a lot of people who are willing to sell out their own kind just because they think they're going to be able to survive this in the end. And in the end, I'll tell you what, nobody might survive, because it's a scary road that we're going down, and hopefully there's an exit ramp somewhere we can take. I'm hoping we're at that exit ramp. And so I want to thank everyone who tuned in. Like I said, tune in, of course, Monday. This is happening Monday at 3 o'clock. Tom DeWeese, the American Policy Center, and he's been talking about sustainability and sustainable development probably for about 30 some odd years. That's about how long I've known they've been around. And I've had Tom DeWeese on the show before. It's been a while, so this ought to be pretty interesting. If you want to come out and help us, we're fighting against the monster. We're fighting against the machine, rage against the machine. We're going to have another rally, Stop the Windmills rally, because we're rallying together to band together to stop this windmill project. And I believe we can do it. I believe we can do it. If we use all the tools in our toolbox, if we are pretty smart about going about this, we can stop this project. And high noon on Saturday, June 15th, that's not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday, in Gold Beach, and then in Brookings. You can see the addresses there. You can find this at Facebook on Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. I highly recommend you go to Oregonians Against Wind Turbines and join the group. We don't have a lot of members now, and that's only because I think we're just having a hard time getting the word out about this. But we're doing our best, and we're doing these rallies. And the following week, we're going to be in Bandon and in Coos Bay. It's really neat because these cities, Gold Beach is not far from Brookings, so it's easy to drive from one to the other and have two rallies at two different cities on the same day. But we're doing that in Bandon and Coos Bay, which will be happening on the 22nd of June. And I'll post that as soon as this next one's over with. So it ought to be a pretty darn good time. So I highly recommend that you all show up for it. Let's see, what else do I got here? BOC meeting. Now, this was weird. The BOC, the lady who sends out the meeting notices, one of the meetings that is happening at 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday, June 11th, is called Everyone Owns a Part Discussion. But, of course, they didn't say what the hell we were going to be discussing or what we own a part of. Everyone owns a part discussion. And I don't know if they're talking about the debt. I don't know if they're talking about the pickup for the sheriff's department. I don't know what they're talking about, because they don't put anything on these meeting notices. But this is a work session that's happening at 8:30 a.m. this Tuesday, June 11th. I highly recommend you go out there and find out what everyone owns a part of. And I know this sucks that the meeting is so early in the morning on a work day, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to make it. But those of you who can, please show up to this meeting. It's really important. For my sponsors, I want to thank them for sponsoring me, because, like I've said many times, you have to be a badass mofo to be a sponsor of my show. And if you need some trees taken out, you've got some trees that are covering up your view. Maybe you got some trees that may be a liability because they might blow down in the wind and take out your neighbor's garage, and you don't want to pay for the neighbor's garage, so you want to get that tree taken down. 3H Tree Service are the people to call. 3H Tree Service, call them at 541-294-1800. Once again, that's 541-294-1800. Talk to Matt Holman. And guess what, folks? We're going to be playing Where's 3H Tree Service on Monday. Once again, Where's 3H Tree Service happening Monday. I forgot to put up the photo of last Monday's winner. And so this coming up Monday, we're going to be playing again. You find out If you can find them, 3H Tree Service, you'll win $50, but that doesn't happen till Monday. And they're starting it earlier in the day. I think he said 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock. I'm sure if you showed up and you found 3H Tree Service sometime on Monday, you would win the prize. There's only one person who wins every round. There's only one round every Monday, and so there will only be one winner. And hopefully you'll be that winner, and we'll announce it on my show, and that's for 3H Tree Service. Let's see, Tom and Gigs. I finally put the address down for Tom and Gigs. I don't know what I was thinking. They're over there on Schoenman Street, 135 South Schoenman Street, right, basically diagonal from the Devereaux Center. So, I don't know if Tim wants me to put that out there. I don't know. But, he gets to watch the freak show every day over there at the Devereaux Center while he's working on cars and trucks. I went over there a couple of weeks ago, and the whole place was surrounded by trucks that were having something done to them. And it was really cool, except that Tim has to work his butt off. Luckily, he was on the show to talk to us because he hadn't been on the show for a while because he was one guy short to help on the automobiles. So, Tim was having to, make up the slack. Hopefully that will be taken care of, and we'll get Tim on the show this Monday from Tom and Gigs to talk about what's going on at Tom and Gigs. I'm sure they're fixing some cars or putting on some tonneau covers, or maybe they're working on a remote control car, one of those RC cars. Those RC cars are really cool. If you need some tannerite, they got the tannerite for you. They've got t-shirts, they've got sweatshirts, they've got every part you could ever need for any of those RC cars. And you can order side rails, side racks. You need bumpers, whatever you need, mufflers, they can help you out with it over at Tom and Gigs. Highly recommend them over at 135 South Schoenman. And Herbal Choices. Herbal Choices is for all of you adults over 21. When you have those cannabis needs, you need some edibles, you need a bong, you need a pipe. Hey, check out Herbal Choices. Beautiful stores they have. They have one in South Bandon. They have one going north in Coos Bay. They have one South 101 Coos Bay, or North Bend. The one in North Bend is on the south lane, the lane going south. And then they have a one in Reedsport. They have a shop, beautiful shop there. And they have a very beautiful shop over in Charleston. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shops where you can go and take care of your Herbal Choices. Herbal Choices, I highly recommend them. They're friends of mine, and they've been supporters for quite a long time. Now, completely changing the subject, Oregon Firearms Federation. Kevin Starrett is a one-man wrecking machine, and he's been taking care of defending our Second Amendment rights for over 30 years. And Oregon Firearms Federation is a good place to put your money. If you want to defend your firearms, go to OregonFirearms.org and check out Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in Oregon. And they've been around for a long time. Don't give to any of those phony groups. Don't give to any of those phony gun groups. Do your homework, and I highly recommend Oregon Firearms Federation, the only one who's actually fighting for your Second Amendment rights. And if you want to go and practice your Second Amendment rights, I highly recommend going to the Bandit Gun Club. They're not my sponsors, but I like mentioning them because they're a heck of a good people out there. BanditGunClub.org. If you need to find out what's going on at the Bandit Gun Club or where it's at, go to BanditGunClub.org. And if you want to sight in your rifle, want to go do some rifle practice, they actually have a pistol range as well. Tioga Sports Park, you can get them at TiogaSportsPark.org, TiogaSportsPark.org. And they're on Highway 101 right next to the dump. Yes, you know where the county dump is. Well, go to the county dump, and instead of going right into the county dump, you go left to the gun range. And I recommend everyone go join it and go practice. Take your kids, teach them how to shoot. Someday they may need to know how to do that. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It's been a blast. I love this Friday night show. This is really cool. It's there's not much to do my age, Friday night, Bandon. In fact, everything closes down by 9 in this damn city. So I'm actually providing a hell of a service to a lot of you people who have nothing to do on Friday night, except check out maybe a crazy show. We're going to talk about crazy conspiracy theories and other things. And I promise you, next Friday, we'll be back again, hot in the seat, ready to go. And so until then, you know what I always say. You do know what I always say. Carry on, America. Carry on.